Okay. Zip.
Well, none of that now.
Zip, zip, zip. All right, so here's what we're doing, is I'm gonna go over the schedule, actually. Because we're doing some service work, we're doing a lot of classroom stuff, we're doing a retreat. So, everybody will get one of these, and I'm gonna pass this around. So if you all will fill that out with everything that's on there. If you don't have Twitter, if you're not on Twitter, don't worry about it.
With our name or?
No, your stuff. Yeah, because rather than me contact your parents and have them relay to you, I'm gonna contact you guys directly. All right, so Elliot. All right, are you two gonna be okay to sit there? No. All right, I'm gonna give him a shot. Confirmation, while that's moving around, let's talk a little bit about this. There's a welcome letter that I'm giving all of your all's parents, and it's right here, and it talks about all of the logistics of what we're doing. Confirmation is on April the 11th, and you'll get a schedule that shows all that. The expectations are these. One, that you participate, and two is that you move your chair.
Well, I was just laughing.
Yeah, I know. You know what that's called? A distraction. Here, sit right here. Yeah, oh yeah, that's not the way we're gonna roll. We're gonna talk a little.
I didn't even do anything,
We're
Garrett.
gonna talk a little bit more about the expectations here shortly. All right, so leaders. Those I know some of you guys are sick of looking at me. You've had me for a couple of years, but sorry. So this is going to be entirely different from what we've done in the past. So get ready for that. But we've got two other people helping out this year. This is Jean Riggs. She's going to be helping us, and that's Jean Jury, who's also going to be helping us. So they're both Jean. So that's one less name that you all have to remember.
Jean sits next to me.
Okay, there you go. Now we know. Now, here's the thing. I know a lot of you guys might have a parent who's not Catholic. You've probably got some family who's not Catholic. I'm sure you got a lot of friends who aren't Catholic. Being Catholic's hard. There's high expectations. There's a lot of rules. There's a lot of don't do this and don't do this. It's not as easy as some of the other religions, and we're going to talk a lot about that. So the expectations are high, which is like, don't giggle while I'm talking. Don't do it. All right. So being Catholic is hard, and you're going to discover that as we move forward. So goals. Here's what we're going to try to do. Answer your questions, because if you take this seriously, you're going to have some. Why do we do? Mass is a great example. Why do we sit up or stand up and sit and kneel and stand up and sit and kneel? Anybody, just as a question, anybody know that? Why we change our posture all the time? It's so we don't fall asleep. I'm kidding. We'll talk about that and 100 other things like it. Why do we go to confession and all my friends say we don't have to do that in our church? Why? We're going to cover a lot of those. Yes?
I forgot my email.
Okay, so I'll get it later.
I'm not using my school.
No, yeah, don't use something that I'm going to send you at school. I don't want you to return. Okay.
That was funny.
All right. Now, here's the other thing we're going to do is this is, in the end, this is going to be your decision. Your parents made a decision for you when you got baptized because you were an infant, or maybe you got baptized later. And either way, this is your decision. If you don't want to do it, nobody's going to force you to do it. But what I'm going to do is inform you about what it means to be Catholic. And in the end, you've got to decide, is this for me? Is this going to be my faith that I want to live for the rest of my life? Now, a little more about expectations. You need to be here. If you miss a couple, that's not the end of the world. If you miss a bunch, we got to figure something out. But just in case, I am going to record every one of these, and I'll send a link that you can watch it on. But if you can't be here, I need you to watch it. And if you can't be here, I'll be in touch with your parents, kind of making sure that you watch it, because there's a lot of this that's extremely important.
What do you mean by service work?
I'm getting to that. Give me a
Okay.
second. Participation means ask questions, which is good, and involve yourself in the discussion, because some of this stuff is going to be sensitive. It's in the welcome letter. We're going to hit on some topics I'm going to have your parents' permission to talk about in here. It's going to get a little touchy, and I want you to participate in those things. And then third is the service work. We're going to do 2 or 3 different things. We're going to do some work with Habitat for Humanity. Anybody familiar with that? They help build houses for poor people. So we're going to help build a house one day. We're going to work with the Sister Visitor Center in Louisville, which is part of Catholic Charities. And we're going to go down with the poorest of the poor people and help with them. We're gonna go to a nursing home and sing them some Christmas carols around Christmas time, and maybe one or two other things. And then in January, we'll have a retreat, which will start on Sunday morning after Mass and last all the way till the next morning. It'll be an overnight. Yes, yes, sir.
All those activities you just listed, we're gonna get to help.
Yes, yep. You all are gonna have a lot of responsibilities. Y'all are gonna have a lot of responsibilities. Is that recording? Yeah. And it's gonna be expected of you. It's mandatory. You be at the service projects and the retreat. That's not optional. You're gonna have to be there. That's why I'm giving you plenty of notice. All right, the materials we're gonna use. Who knows what it means to have a working Bible?
Bible that you can read.
One that you can read, but what else?
One that is, I don't know what you call it, but you have to get it, it's done something to it by the priest or something.
No, that's a good guess though. Like a blessing. That's not. Somebody said it. A working Bible looks like this.
He's writing it.
So when you open it up, it looks like this, where you're going through there and you're saying, hey, this is something I need to know. Hey, this is something I need to know. The good news is you don't have to know, is that something I should know? Because I'm going to tell you, and those are your old Bibles right over there. And okay, well, thank you. As we progress through the class, I'm going to tell you, highlight this is important. Write this in the margin, this is important. So that for the rest of your life, you've got a working Bible that you can use to learn more about the faith and understand some of the finer points. We will also have a book called Why Do Catholics Do That? Because there's a bunch of stuff we do. Who knows why we do this during Mass? At the Gospel reading, for example. 12 million things like that. We're going to talk about those. Why do we do those things? Right? See those blue books beside the stacks of Bibles? Those books are called Why Do Catholics Do That? And you're all going to get one of those too, and we're going to highlight that to death and write in the margins, okay? Cool. So that you know the answers to those. Now, Miss Jean Jury, let me use this book, and it's excellent, and we're going to use this, except we're going to use the app. Does anyone not have a cell phone that you can get an app on? Okay. Is that a joke, or are you serious?
No, I'm being
okay.
serious.
I can print out versions of that as well. Sometimes we'll use the app, and I'll have printed copies for people who can't access that by phone. The Why Do Catholics Do That is very much about the Catholic faith. The Decision Point book or app is very much about your own individual journey toward confirmation and what it means for you as an individual. It's a nice compliment to what else we're doing. Yes, sir?
My parents just took my app store away. They were going to give it back to me later.
Okay, that's fine. If not, we got it. And then the binder is something I'm going to do. All of these presentations are going to be in there. There's going to be some extra material in there. There's going to be a whole section on vocabulary. Who knows what an ambo is? Right? Exactly. The ambo is where the guy that reads the readings during Mass, he stands at the ambo. It's another word for like a lectern. Okay? And there's a bunch of Catholic words that you might not know what the heck they're talking about. So you're going to have a whole section on vocabulary words. So I'm putting a binder together for you every week. I'm adding to it with what we covered that week. And at the end, you're going to have a big fat binder.
Why?
A big fat Catholic binder. Yeah, I'm gonna
That
Catholic
sounds
you people up. Yes, sir.
It's going to be like a cactus.
Are you gonna hit us with
No, but I'm going to be asking questions in class, and we're going to need to know the answers to a lot of them. Yes.
Is it going to be like a cactus?
It's going to be a catechism.
Yes.
It's like a catechism. What's a catechism? Anybody know what a catechism is? What?
something?
Can you be more specific? No, you cannot.
Something that starts with a C.
Yeah. So it's
Ew, that's
catechism
pretty
is the teaching aspect of the faith, and we'll do a lot of that. All right, the process, class discussions, which is what we're doing right now. We're going to mark up those books, and every week I'll be adding to your binders. And this is going to be a challenge. You guys have had me, but this is, like I said, it's going to be entirely different. More is going to be expected of you, and quite frankly, more is going to be demanded of you than we did in the past, because this is important. All right. So, but we're here to help. Ask. That's why, unless it's a silly question, if you raise your hand, I'm going to call on you, and I'll give you chances to ask legitimate questions. Yes.
Do you want me to put my parents' phone number down, or just
No, I want your all's phone numbers.
Oh,
If you were
mine
putting,
specifically?
yeah, because what I'm going to do is if for example, we're going to do some service work on a Saturday. On Friday, I might text everybody and say, hey, just a reminder, we're meeting at St. Michael's at such and such time tomorrow. Yes.
What if you don't have a phone?
You don't have a phone? Do you have a phone? Are you his brother?
No,
He can tell you.
he's adopted.
Okay. Does he live with you?
That's
No.
No, you all look just alike.
He
You
lives
can't
in
be
the
adopted.
Haley, I had
Hey, like
breast
that, y'all look
surgery
just
when
alike.
I was 3.
Hey. All right. So now, what we're covering tonight is the introduction, which we just did.
I suppose nobody has Twitter.
None of y'all have Twitter?
We're not from
I
the
do.
1900s.
I do. Roasted.
Yeah.
I have Snapchat.
Don't worry, I'm gonna make it. I'll make
All right,
it.
we'll work on that.
I don't
We'll
know
work on
my
that.
username is on there though.
That's fine. That's fine. If we have to use Snapchat, we'll use Snapchat.
It's gonna be weird.
That's gonna be awkward.
Start
That'd be
streaks.
Hey,
Oh,
man,
you're gonna put it on your story.
We're gonna start
You're
streaks.
gonna put it on your story.
Are you gonna look at our stories? That's strange.
That's called.
You can
That's,
block
We'll
someone from
stick
your
to
story.
we'll
you know
stick to
that?
texting. We'll stick to texting. All right.
I was about to say. That's
Okay.
so
All right. Listen.
I'll make it Twitter.
So, who was listening a while ago and knows what's happening on October 1st? Raise your hand now.
Oh,
You gotta know the number too.
What number?
Oh, I was gonna say.
What, oh, I thought you were saying, oh, okay, go.
Connor, you said it. Isn't it the 225th anniversary?
Yes.
I said it
October,
in there.
I know, I said who was listening over there and I was asking again. So because, listen please, because that is coming up, we're gonna talk about our parish, all right, because it's a big deal. Guess what someone wrote one time? St. Michael's is one of the most important parishes in the history of American Catholicism.
What's
Not-
that?
Not Nelson County, not Kentucky, but the United States. One of the
Somebody
most
needs
important parishes.
Just the
Who wrote that?
Does
Done a
anybody
long
just-
time ago, and here's why. Because there's been about 75 priests and nuns that grew up here, became priests or nuns, and when the Catholic Church moved from the East Coast, this was the first place it moved westward, and from here, the priests and nuns that grew up here started churches in Michigan, and Illinois, and Indiana, and Ohio, and Missouri, and Arkansas, and Tennessee, and Alabama, and Florida, and Mississippi, and all the way up to California. It was the first stop on the move westward, and we were a huge role in that. So it's a very, very important history that we have. All right, so we're going to go through this pretty quickly. St. Michael's started in 1792. We're as old as the state. The state was started the same year we became a parish.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Yep. Third old. Where Alleghenies? Is that an animal like a crocodile?
It sounds like.
What's Alleghenies?
I'm a Stegosaurus.
I thought this might be a problem.
Is it a mountain?
Yeah, the Alleghenies are mountains. They're mountains that run up down the
Appalachians.
East Coast. We're the third oldest parish west of there. So in the whole United States, there's only two older than us if you get past the Alleghenies. Now, last Sunday, what did I say we did? That historical marker is out by the cemetery talking about some of the stuff we're going to cover here.
Oh, I wasn't
The
there.
oldest tombstone in that cemetery, guess what year the guy was born that's under that old?
1792.
Okay.
Wait.
What year he was born?
like 1750.
All right, the person gets closest gets $1. That's what I thought. Everybody wants to participate now, like $1. Everybody take a guess. Give it
You
a guess.
must live under a bridge.
What year was he born?
Wait, what was the question?
Name
again? I'll
year.
get it right.
What year was the guy born that's under the oldest tombstone in the cemetery?
1740.
All right.
17
Hold on. You gotta give me my best guess.
1705.
Wait, no, I got you.
1701.
Okay.
Wait, no, I'll go.
All right, Connor.
I'm gonna get this right. I got this, bro.
Connor. Let's go.
Oh, okay.
I'll come back to you at the end, Garrett.
Did someone say 1770?
17 what?
7.
1707?
You
No,
did
they have.
1701. You did
Okay, go.
1723.
Okay.
1715.
All right.
I got you.
1732.
Okay.
I want to say something as a joke, but I'm trying to be serious.
Okay. Go.
1793.
Can I refresh mine?
Did I get it right?
No.
'You're cheating.
1789.
Okay.
17.
Michael's the winner, but just barely. You were
Wait, what'd he
close,
get?
too.
What'd he
He
get?
said 1723, and you said what, 1730?
32.
32.
I was gonna say
You were 6 years
1738.
off, he was only 3 years off. It's 1726.
Throwing in 20,000.
He was born in 1726.
Ironically, he only has
You are man.
And
I can't even afford
he was a veteran of the Revolutionary War. Not the Civil War,
Oh, I
not
thought
World War
he
II,
was a
the Revolutionary
and
War.
then-
Now, here's the other thing. He died in 1822. Dollar for who can tell me how old he was.
Wait.
You got 10 seconds.
When was he born?
1726. I'm not saying anything else. Dollar, you got 10 seconds.
Oh my God.
100.
Now say it. I'll know it if I hear it.
94.
101.
93, 92,
100.
91,
99. 98.
When did he die?
Dylan
88.
died.
What did he say?
Dylan can do math.
Because he's a smart kid.
I said 98.
He has to be a person who
He was
knows.
90.
I hear 94, 96. I'm failing
No, I'm
math
not
class.
saying
Don't
if you
expect
guess
me to get
25 guesses, you
These
get one
Chris
guess.
don't know
All right,
I guessed
96
3
years old. I know, you get one. And your first one was wrong. All right, so here we go. What if I told you? That's what I do with this parish a lot of times because people drive by, they look, oh, that's a nice little church. They come in, oh, this is a nice little congregation, pretty small, but so the things are, what if I told you these things? It's kind of shocking that we've done all this. What if I told you that one historian called us the cradle of religious vocations in Kentucky and that several dozen came from here, which we just talked about, that kind of helped the westward expansion? That we became the springboard for the growth of American Catholicism as the country moved westward. So again, not important in Nelson County, which we are, not important in the state, which we are, but important as the United States. That our first priest here was the first priest ordained in the United States of America. So the first guy that became a priest in America was our first priest.
Cool.
He was an exile from the French Revolution. Who knows what that is?
French Revolution. It was a revolution in France.
It's whenever I think it was
we
France
learned about
and
this in school.
Russia maybe. Well, yeah, I know.
What? How sweet was that?
Here.
Did you have something? Oh, wasn't it like?
What is a revolution?
Exactly right.
There was a takeover of the government. All right.
Oh,
So
isn't that like when they
um,
did
yeah,
the
a lot of the priests became what they're called exiles, and they had to leave. They were out. So this guy that came here was French. So the first thing he had to do when he got to America, guess what he had to do first?
Was learn English.
Learn English. And then they sent him to Kentucky from Baltimore. And he got here, and this was nothing but wilderness. So I'm sure it was as tough on him as it was people trying to understand him. All right, what's a resident pastor? What's that mean? Resident pastor.
Someone who lives here and is also a priest.
Yeah, the first guy, you know what the first guy did?
So smart.
He rode his horse around to different churches. So he didn't live here. He'd ride here, then he'd ride over there, and he'd ride. That guy rode, guess how many miles that guy rode in his lifetime? It's estimated. How many? 1,000,000 miles.
Really,
Oh, I
Chris?
got you.
Man.
3.
Okay.
726.
I have 568.
Did I get it right?
638.
Okay. Other than Chris, who way overestimated 1,000,000 miles.
100,000.
Bingo, you got it. 100,000 miles they
I was
estimated
closer
that he
than
rode
you.
in his lifetime, which is a lot on a horse.
I was
All right.
closer than you.
So the first resident pastor meant the first guy who lived here as our priest would later become a bishop. He was also the first priest to be ordained in the state of Kentucky. So again, they ordain them and they send them here to deal
That's
with us.
pretty good.
4 of our priests through the years have become bishops.
Buzzkill.
And who's heard of the Sisters of Charity? And who's heard of Nazareth? Anybody heard of Nazareth? It's right over in Bardstown.
Yeah, I go to the church.
You go to the church there sometime?
I've
Good.
been there once.
So the Sisters of Charity were started in 1812 over in Bardstown. They've been around for 215 years,
We did.
205 years. And the lady who started that order, the Mother Superior, Father said y'all would meet in here. Okay, I was just saying, he said you all would meet in here with us because there's no room over there.
There's no room back here.
Maybe. So, what?
Actually, I went back. Didn't Jesus walk on the ground in Nazareth?
Not the Nazareth here. Yeah, the Nazareth in the Middle East, yes. This Nazareth is named after that. So, the lady who started the Sisters of Charity came from here. She was born here and raised here. Her name was Mother Catherine Spalding. Anybody ever heard of her? You're going to a lot.
That was necessary. I had to grab this.
I know. Just watch my
know.
iPad, please. All right. Another girl who grew up, Garrett Connor. Look. Another woman who grew up here, a girl who grew up here, also became a Mother Superior of that order. And that of the first 61 years they existed, 50 of those years our Mother Superior came from our parish. So this is an international organization that started with people from right here at St. Michael's. Now, one of the settlers here was called by this historian one of the most extraordinary Catholic women of her day in Nelson County. Oh, no, wait, in Kentucky. No, wait, in all of America. One of the most
It says
important,
it right there. How can you
extraordinary
mess up that
Catholic
much?
women of her day in all of America. She also knew Bishop Carroll from Maryland and this guy named George Washington. She knew him.
Hey, that's
Wow,
pretty
now
good.
that-
I know that guy too.
Yeah, you know Bishop Carroll?
Wasn't he the
No,
one who
God,
got
God.
George Washington.
Yeah, just
All right. So, by the way, that lady that I'm talking about there is my great grandmother. Yeah.
Cool.
We'll talk more about her. There's a school in Louisville called Presentation. You ever heard of that?
Yes,
Okay. There's a college in Louisville called Spalding. You ever heard of that?
yes.
All right. The
Catholicism.
college is named. It's called Spalding, named after Catherine Spalding, who came from here. Yes.
Catholicism.
Matthew's grandmother, Aunt Great Annie, was principal there.
Oh,
Sister Rose Raleigh.
well, how about that? How about that?
Back to
How
this.
about
Presentation.
that?
There you go. See, you have St. Michael's to thank for all that.
St.
Hey,
Michael's.
Father. Here's Father Johnny.
Cool.
Good. Yeah, that Spalding is named after her, and she started Presentation Academy. Now, if you go downtown Louisville, right there on 5th Street, in front of the cathedral, you'll see that, which is a picture of this lady from St. Michael's. You know, statues are kind of a sensitive
I don't think
topic
she would appreciate it.
these
She'd get her
days,
parents or something.
and most of them are being taken down, but one of hers being put up with a child in her arms and holding another one's hand because she started an orphanage there for the kids who didn't have any parents. They had died from the cholera. So, very important person. A statue right downtown in Louisville came from here.
We
Yes.
just learned about the orphan train today in history class.
Yep. Orphanages were very popular back then because there were so many diseases that were killing people, and a lot of times these kids would have no parents left, and so they had places for them to stay and people to take care of them. And a lot of times it was the Catholic Church taking care of those people. All right. Now, here's the thing. So far, we haven't talked about any men. These are all women doing all this stuff. And guess what? At that time, they couldn't even vote yet. So the fact that so much was going on here from the women of the parish speaks volumes about how influential they were. All right. So, but there were some men that did stuff. The first bishop in the whole state of Tennessee was a parishioner of St. Michael's. There's a great big fat book about him that's that thick. That the first priest here, the one I mentioned earlier, later worked in Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan, and while in Indiana, bought land for a college that is known today as Notre Dame. So he helped start Notre Dame. There's a building there named after him. But before all that, he was our priest here. The first Catholic church in Louisville, which was way after we got started, was called St. Louis Church. It was started in 1811, and who knows what a mission is?
So whenever you seek out to fulfill your duties as whatever you're doing.
That's a pretty good description.
Pretty much an assignment.
It is an assignment. So what that means is the priest at St. Michael's, the church in Louisville was a mission of his. He would have to travel there to say mass and take care of that church, so to speak. It was a mission of our parish. So that St. Louis Church is still in existence today, except it's known by a different name, which is today called the Cathedral of the Assumption. So the Cathedral of the Archdiocese used to be a mission of our parish. So no matter how big and fancy they think they are, they're our little brother. What?
Is it okay to, whenever you're in the Cathedral of Assumption, you can assume things?
Yeah, who knows? You don't know what the Assumption is, do you? Obviously.
No.
So I
We'll talk about that. I think now the people who've been in my class
I've been in
You got a
here for
lottery
like
ticket?
1
should know
year.
this. We've got a class called The Things You Should Already Know, and in case you don't, here you go. We're going to talk about those.
Oh,
Who
he
knows what the
lied.
assumption is? You guys should know if you've been in my class.
She knows.
You, she probably. She's
You're
the
right.
most
Something
likely-
was assumed, but it wasn't a thought. It was a person. Does that help you? It was a person. No, that's the assumption. Assumption.
I was right. We're
Yeah,
making
you
plenty
said-
of
yeah.
assumptions.
Mary was
No.
assumed. What was assumed about her? What happened?
She like runs, but like her body.
Rose.
Body and soul. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Body and soul into heaven. So she's not buried here on earth anywhere. She went body and soul into heaven because she was Jesus' mother and God had chosen her. Right?
We need Jesus.
So that's what the cathedral's named after, the Cathedral of the Assumption. Already had that. Okay. All right, there's a school, in fact, there was a kid in our CCD program 3 or 4 years ago who went to Pitt Academy.
I remember him.
Anybody know what Pitt Academy is? It's, yeah. Do you?
I sort of.
Okay, it's a special needs school, all right? And it's named after Monsignor Pitt, who grew up here and became known as a very influential figure in education. He started the Catholic school PTA. He was assigned by the government to go to Germany at the end of World War II to reestablish their education system. He started a TV show on the Louisville TV station, and eventually started working with special needs kids, and the school today is still named after him. A very big book was written about him recently, and he grew up here as well. And just in case you think, well, that was all 200 years ago, gosh, now we're just another church. Wrong. All right, so who knows what the Record is?
Record for what?
The Record is a newspaper. Anybody ever heard of it?
Oh, yeah.
No.
I get that.
It's
I've never heard
it's
of
the
it.
Catholic
I know.
newspaper for our archdiocese.
I was being sarcastic.
So, if you look at this from earlier this year, there's these two ladies in that picture at the bottom. You see those? The one in the blue sweater is a nun who came from our parish. She has been a nun for not 10, not 20, not 30, not 40, not 50, but 60 years.
My grandpa introduced me to her.
She's been a school principal. She worked for 30 years at the Sister Visitor Center, which is where we're going to go do some service work, working with the poorest of the poor. And her name is Sister Grace Simpson. She's my aunt. So she is the one who always tells us when we're getting out of line.
She gave me a peppermint.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's awesome.
Did she ever smack you on the knuckles with a ruler like they
Not
do?
me, but her sisters will tell stories about when she was a principal.
I have a question. I'm not trying to be mean.
Okay.
Why are we going to be doing service work?
Because it's part of your Catholic faith. Catholics are big on service. Let me tell you something real quick, a quick stat. There's an organization called Catholic Charities. It's international. It's all over the world. It's the biggest charity they do more charity work from a money perspective than the next three combined. So number 2, number 3, number 4, if you put all three of those together, they don't equal what Catholic Charities does. They work with the poorest of the poor in Africa, in India, all over the world, and even here locally in each diocese, they're working constantly, and we're going to work with them. Working with them is a great opportunity, yes.
Wait, so they're more than the top 3, like, religious groups, or just?
Any organization, they do more charity work than the next 3 combined. That's how big they are. And it's one because they're everywhere. I mean, they're all over the world, and you know, it's not just priests and nuns, it's people volunteering their time to work for them. So, anybody ever heard of Mother Teresa?
Yes.
Yeah. Mother Teresa was working in the streets of India with homeless people laying in a gutter, dying of illnesses, and everybody said, "Get away from me, I might catch that." She's down on her hands and knees trying to help those people, and the Catholic Church is doing that all over the world. And one night on our schedule, we're going to talk about the good work the church is doing. What?
Are we going to be going to Hades?
To Haiti?
Hades.
Hades? No.
Okay.
You might think so.
Where is he?
It's in Africa. It's a place in Africa.
Oh.
You remember that thing from elementary lit?
No. Haiti is a country, but it's in the Caribbean. Hades is not in Africa.
Hades.
Or I forgot where it was. It was somewhere.
Hades is another name for hell, for one. I don't know.
It was something like that.
Okay, well, yeah, that's true. What time?
The Hades in the Caribbean is awesome.
Haiti, H-A-I-T-I. Haiti.
Anyway, it's
Yeah,
awesome.
they're in the thread of
We
the
went to
hurricane. What,
vacation.
Gary?
This is about the retreat. What time were we supposed to get there on that Sunday?
For Mass.
What time's Mass?
I'm not gonna tell you that. You're
What's
gonna figure
Mass?
it out.
So what's Mass?
I know I've been asked a lot of questions.
It'll be at
so
10
I don't
by
know
then.
if
We're
we
changing our
start.
Mass time. It'll be at 10.
Okay, so like, how soon are we gonna start
They
doing
made it earlier.
How soon are we gonna
I'll
start
be
doing
here.
work?
Do you all mind to be quiet while
We've
Elliot's
got
asking
3
this
Saturdays.
question?
The first one's October 21st, so not for a while. There's 3 Saturdays you're gonna be required to be at, and that's the first one's in October. All right, so that picture from earlier this year shows her as she's 60 years as an Ursuline, which is an order of nuns from Mount St. Joseph. That her cousin, which is also my cousin, celebrated 50 years as a nun this year, and she works in Chile. Who knows where Chile is? Chile.
It's in.
Ooh, I know
I
where
know.
the Chili's is.
That's awesome.
Dang it! I wanted to say it.
It is on the
Chili's
west
is
coast,
over by
I
Lowe's.
think.
It's on the East Coast. No, it's not. You're right. It is on the West Coast. And you know what it
And
looks
it's really
like?
long. It's like
It's
a
really
chili
long
pepper.
and skinny. It runs right along.
It's like
the
a
ocean.
chili pepper.
Yeah.
He said
Chili's
it.
is over by
He
Lowe's.
said
That's
it.
exactly what
I
I was
said.
saying.
I
That's-
pointed at him and
that's
said
very
that's what
good.
he said.
Now, here's the thing. That's where she works. She opened about 30 years ago a women's shelter for to try to teach women how to do very small work, sewing, cleaning houses, so that they can make a little bit of money on their own. So she's run that women's shelter for the last 30 years after growing up here. All right. So there's still lots of work being done in the world today on behalf of St. Michael's. That's in South America. Karen Hall is another person who grew up here. She's a Carmelite sister. Carmelites are a different order. Carmelites are tough. They're cloistered. Who knows what cloistered means? I know you don't know that word.
Can I have a
If you
dictionary?
do, I'll be impressed. If you
Me.
know. No, not me. Cloistered means they don't go in the outside world. They stay in their convent. They don't visit the outside world. They're almost always silent.
So how do they eat?
They pray. They pray and they work. She works and prays. I wrote her a letter. She wrote me a letter back explaining kind of some of the work she does. She does a lot of manual labor, but they're prayer based. They're praying for everybody everywhere and trying to, better the world through prayer.
Can we find any of these words in a dictionary?
Cloister you'll find in there, yeah.
Can I have a
Neighbor.
dictionary?
She's up in Terre Haute. The Louisville Carmelites merge with the Ursulines here locally.
So, what do you mean by don't go into the outside world? Like, don't leave the house at all?
They've got a big property and they never leave the property. Now, sometimes the one in charge will go out for different things, but they stay. Huh?
What about food? They grow their food?
They have people who go out and either bring it in or it's brought in to them. They don't go outside of their property.
That sounds
Do they just
So-
stay there forever?
Yep.
Wow.
All right, so
That's
moving
impressive.
on. Father Malachi is my buddy. Now let me tell you about Father Malachi.
He's the
Who
guy
knows
that's
what a
probably in the
Trappist
bathroom still.
is?
A person that
Okay,
traps.
he's the guy that walked into
Nope.
the bathroom then.
Who knows what a Trappist is?
You will take
Like
like
someone who can get
That's my
out
best
of
guess.
things.
Nope. Good guess. It's an order of monks. You know where Gethsemane is? Anybody ever been to Gethsemane?
My sister has for
All right. If you
confirmation.
go to Gethsemane, it's on the way to New Haven, and it's over on the other side of Bardstown, and there's a bunch of monks that live there, right? Which are kind of like priests, but they don't have a parish that they're over. They just they work on the farm there, and their order is called Trappists. Yeah.
One of my cousins was a monk.
Yeah, I know. Matthew?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. Now, he wasn't a Trappist, but he was a different order, but yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. So Father Malachi was in Bardstown or Gethsemane, and then he became the head of a monastery in Utah. And he's still there, and he's 92 years old.
Whoa!
He's been a Trappist monk for over 70 years, all right? So now let me tell you something funny about him. I was doing some research on the parish, and I knew he was out there. His last name is Flaherty. I don't know if you know any Flahertys around here, but he's probably related to them. So I contacted the monastery and said, hey, you have a person there who grew up in my parish, and it's Father Malachi. Is there a way for me to get in touch with him? And they said, first of all, you're not allowed to talk to him. And they said, he doesn't do email, but you can write him a letter, and he may or may not write you back. So he did. He wrote me the neatest letter talking about growing up here. And get this, when he was growing up here, they had the school here, and so him and his brother would get to school every day in a horse and buggy, but it was a one-seater. So one of them would ride for a while, and the other one would run behind it, and then they trade.
So
So-
why wouldn't they just sit in each other's lap?
It wasn't their thing.
Would that be
They were
fine?
running to stay warm, for one thing, because he would say during the winter, they had one little set of foot warmers for the person inside, and the person outside would run to try to stay
Why
warm.
are y'all running in me?
So, right, yeah, you would never survive. You would never make it. You would never make it, for many reasons, but that being one of them. So that was one of the neat stories he told, along with some of the stories about the school at one time, which was one room, and they had one heater in the center of the room. So times were a little different back then. But yeah, so he and I exchanged a couple letters. He's a really neat guy. So, and I don't have this stuff right here that it says, but right down in front of our church, there's an old rundown building down there. It used to be a bourbon distillery. And The guy who owned it was named Henry McKenna, and Henry McKenna bourbon is still made, but it's made over in Bardstown. So our cemetery is where the church originally was, but Mr. McKenna owned the distillery, and he owned the big brick house right next to the church, and he donated this land for us to build a new church on and to have more property. So we built a new church here in 1831, and then when we got, it was kind of small, so the new church, that one, was built in 1883, so it's pretty old too. But Mr. McKenna donated all of that, and he's buried in our cemetery. If you go down there, who knows what an obelisk is? That's another word for you.
It's a type of gravestone.
It is, and it's like it's almost like a little tower. It's got several sides, and it's got a point at the top. So that's his tombstone down there in the cemetery. Yeah.
I have a question for. Wait, no.
Go ahead.
But the only reason why I know what an obelisk is because of off of the video game.
Whatever works.
Yeah.
That's a good vocabulary word. Yes, sir.
Aren't you allowed to talk about that?
Because the monks don't talk either. Yeah, if you ever go over to Gethsemane, and you're not allowed to talk when you go in there. When you go in there for church or something, it's zip.
Keep sway down.
Connor, you'd be awful. What happens if you talk?
Yeah.
What are the consequences?
Out you go. All right,
But
so
how do they tell you to get out if they can't talk?
oh, they-
Sign language.
What if you don't know sign
There's
language?
they'll make it work. So this record thing.
They just get a lipstick.
Here's another record from recently. All right, so that man there, based on how he's dressed, what do you think he does for a living?
A priest.
He's a priest. He's a priest. The lady right beside him is his sister. So he's been a priest for 45 years, and she's been a teacher in Catholic school for 45 years. And his name is Father John Burke, and he does a lot of work at the Sister Visitor Center where we're going to be, and she teaches at a Catholic school in Louisville. And why is that relevant to us? Because that's them. They're both retiring this year. He's a priest. She's the sister's a teacher. Both been there 45 years. But in 1919, their grandparents were married here. And their last name was McKenna. So the McKenna family, that's his family. And that's a picture of their wedding. Does that look like a modern wedding to you?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. So that was the wedding, the McKenna wedding party from 1919, right here in our church. What?
I have a story to tell actually.
Does it have anything to do with what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
The word, it has to do with the name Malachi. Is that irrelevant with this story?
If it's just somebody you know. Okay, what time?
Are the boy and the girl fraternal twins?
No, they're just brother and sister. You talking about the ones I just showed on the newspaper?
Yeah.
They're just brother and sister. They're not
That
twins.
guy in the black has a haircut like my teacher.
They're all in the black. Well,
One between the two girls.
Are we gonna
One between the two girls.
what?
Are we gonna be doing anything hands-on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
When?
building houses.
We're only building a house.
No, I'm talking about today.
Oh, today? No, we're almost done. All right,
I'm
so.
gonna go grab the pencil.
No, the laying down on the floor is not gonna work. All right, so in 2008, we did this thing called Building a Future of Hope. It was an archdiocese-wide fundraising effort. Watch my iPad, please. You're just lunging around all over the place over there. So we did a restoration of the church. Who knows what the difference is between a restoration and a renovation? We're all over the vocabulary.
A restoration thing when you restore things.
Right. What's a renovation?
You take things and put some other things in it.
Yeah, a renovation is you're upgrading or making something new. A restoration is you're restoring it to the way it used to look, right? So our church had changed a lot, particularly in the 70s. They had wood paneling up on the walls and a lot of stuff that looked very outdated. So we restored it to the way it used to look, including putting the choir loft back in. So it was a very well done project, cost a lot of money. The letter. Anybody know anything about the letter? What's that mean? There's something with a letter in our church.
There's a letter about something.
Oh, I know.
That's awesome.
Can I?
You're exactly right.
Thank you.
What?
Isn't it that letter that they found behind all the statues?
You're on it. Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah, but I have
Right.
some more details.
Guess who that letter was given to? Gene. The people who were working in there said, "Hey, we found this. Do you want it, or do you want us to throw it away?" And she thanked
Thrown
God.
up on the dash of his truck.
Yeah.
It was, had, you know, tapes and building nails and everything, and dirty truck, and it was thrown up in.
And when you find out what this is, thank goodness he asked. Okay, go for it.
Okay, So like,
I'll fill in the blank.
it was
Shh.
this, I don't know her name, I forgot her name, but it was this lady and her husband had just died.
Yep.
And she has children, I don't remember how exactly.
Yeah, you're on the right track.
She was wishing, God to go on that, their children have good future.
Yeah, you're on it. That's exactly right. So the letter was signed, so we knew her name, and it was dated. So we knew the writer and the date. And because we've got good cemetery records, found out this lady's name was Sally Pitt, P-I-T-T. Remember Monsignor Pitt? We talked about early Pitt Academy?
No.
It's his mother.
Really?
All right, it was his mother. She wrote the letter in 1902, and it was found in 2008. And it was just on a piece of paper. It was folded a couple of times. And you know the statue of Mary in there in the church?
Yeah.
The big statue?
Yeah.
It was placed behind that, and it sat on that shelf for 106 years.
That's a long time.
And when we found it, she had been in there. The date of the letter was the day her husband died. So she was now a single mom raising a house full of kids and writing a prayer that God help her raise good children.
Don't you mean
to
a
be
widow?
good men and women.
It's,
So did no one bother to dust behind there? Or
No, it was
nothing?
kind of, it was not easy to find. It was tucked in behind there. And then after the improvements were made, you couldn't get to it. It was only found after they tore down some,
Oh.
How would
plastic.
she get it there then?
Back then, there may very well have been a place to put it, but I don't know about that. But I know that,
I didn't know what it was.
yeah,
I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
I just knew it was a letter and I put it in
and
front.
it said 1902.
1902 Sally Pitt, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, I don't know who this is. And so I thought, you knew history,
Mhm.
and I carried it to you in that frame.
Yeah, and I remember.
And when you saw it.
I knew who she was. I didn't know that was the day, but I knew who she was. I said,
Yeah.
man, that's Monsignor Pitt's mother, who's a very important person. So when she said, I pray that my children turn out to be good men and women, he ended up being one of the most influential priests of the 20th century. So her prayers were answered, and that's a lesson for you.
Now, weren't they raised in a house here?
Yeah, they were literally maybe the house next door, if not one or two down from that. The Pitt family is very, very prominent in our church here. So that letter's neat. It's in a frame. As you come in the door of the church, it's right there on the wall. So the question becomes, who's going to be the next important person to come out of this place? Because there's been a bunch of them through the years. Here's my question.
It'll be you.
Will it be you?
No, it'll
It's
be
going to be
Nope.
one of you. It's going to be one of you people if I got anything to
It
do
most
with it.
definitely will be me.
And because guess what? People who have come through this place have changed the world. Believe it or not. Because if you start the Sisters of Charity and they go all over the world doing charity work, you've changed the world. If you become the first bishop in the state of Tennessee and every Catholic that's ever been in Tennessee is there because you started it, you've changed the world. So there have been people come from this place that have been very influential, and we need to know who that next is going to be. All right, any questions about this? Now here's what you need to know. You guys will never, ever, Connor, never know everything there is to know about Catholicism, but you just need to know a certain amount, and what you need is a good Catholic nerd to teach you. Because guess what? And I did this just to show you what a Catholic nerd I am. Read every one of those suckers.
No.
Oh yeah, every one of them. And so when I say listen to me about this, I don't know everything there is to know because I've learned you can't possibly know everything. But there's some important stuff you all need to know, and you're gonna know it. You're at least gonna hear
I bet
it,
it took you 10 years to read all them.
at least. Well, I've been reading them a lot longer than that. What?
So instead of being this great, awesome priest, you decided to teach a whole bunch of idiots?
Priest wasn't it wasn't my cup of tea, man.
You should've.
But you never know. You never know with you guys. You never know. What?
Wait, what?
What's your
I
retirement?
wasn't even. I don't have a
We
question.
were going like this.
What's your retirement plan?
This isn't about me.
Wow.
All right. Now, listen, next week, we're gonna talk about Mass. And we're gonna go, we'll probably be here.
I'm pretty good jacket.
But what we're gonna do is help you understand why we do what we do, because everything that's done in the Mass, every word that's said, the timing of when things happen, it's all done for a reason, and it's all very important. What's the most important thing that happens at Mass, Thomas?
To eat the bread.
Well,
That's
not
wrong.
exactly. You're on the right track.
That's wrong.
But is that what happens? You go up to communion, he goes, piece of bread.
Elliot, why'd you write
What's
unknown?
it?
But
What does he say?
He wrote unknown on his
He's
piece.
a little different.
Dakota.
Sorry.
What's the piece say? When you go up to communion and you hold your hands, what's he say?
Body of Christ.
Body of Christ. So you're on the right track, but it's not a piece of bread because it changes
It's
during
the
Mass.
body of
Yeah,
Christ.
it's the body
Right.
and blood of God.
Right, exactly. So that's the most important thing that happens as a Catholic. And guess what? Other churches, that doesn't happen for them. And they don't think it happens for us. You know why? We don't know why, but we're gonna talk about that. 'Cause
Oh, I
that's
think I know why.
why.
Because they think that we're doing the same things.
They think we're doing the same thing they're doing, but they don't believe we're
different.
that we have the body of Christ and the blood of Christ. They think it's just a piece of bread and wine like they have. But it's not. We're gonna talk about why. All right, last thing.
They think we're cannibals.
In the early days of the church, there was talk that if that's the body and blood, then you're a cannibal.
But they did it the
We're
Bible.
not cannibals.
Right, and there's a lot of teaching on that. When we talk about the church history, we'll talk about that. So here's the plan. Next week's the Mass. The following Wednesday is fall break. Then the next week is the one you mentioned. What you should already know, but I won't tell anybody if you don't. We're gonna go through all the stuff you all should have known by this point. And if you don't, it'll be a good refresher course. Then we're gonna do the early church history. And then that Saturday, the 21st of October, it's not a service work. We're gonna do a tour of what's known as the Holy Lands. It's a bunch of old Catholic churches in this area that are almost as important as we
So
are.
how are we
on
all
what's
getting
happening.
around?
Beat that.
You got
Almost.
school bus you're gonna take us around on?
No, we've got transportation. We got it lined up.
Oh, we're
The
gonna
week
ride
after
on the
that
wagon.
is no class for the Halloween party.
Yeah, but
If
Yeah.
y'all wanna do a haunted house,
I'll bring the chainsaw.
then you gotta be
Wait, is that
dedicated to it and you're
Is
gonna
your
have to show up.
transportation
I'm bringing a
one of
weed
those
eater.
hay bales?
All right, listen, 2 minutes.
I'm hearing you got a
The
lawn
next
mower.
Wednesday, Dakota, the next Wednesday is All Saints Day. So we'll go to Mass and then we'll talk a little bit about that. The next week is why the Catholic Church has done some bad things in the past and why the Catholic Church is so good. So we're gonna talk about both because they both happened. The week after that, November 15th, very important. This is one that your parents will have to sign a waiver for. Drug addiction. I'm gonna bring somebody in to talk about drug addiction. And who in here knows?
Addiction is a disease.
Stop talking. Who in here knows somebody that's an addict?
Well, I don't know why that's an addict. Well, yeah, I do.
I mean,
What about used to be an addict?
well, there never used to be. They're a recovering addict. So if you don't, God bless you, you will. Okay? But the thing is, it's a serious problem in our society, and we're going to bring somebody in to talk to you guys about that and how it happens. Because nobody at Charles' age is going, man, I can't wait to grow up and be an addict. But it happens. Okay? The week after that's Thanksgiving break, and then the last week in November, this is all I'll cover today, is we're going to talk about what's important to you from the 10 most important values that you have. Is your family the most important thing? Is your faith the most important thing? Are your friends the most important thing? Is your phone the most important thing?
To Garrett.
And you're going to write down 10 things with your sponsor that night, and we're going to talk about those. What?
Was Jesus a vegetarian?
Why would you ask that?
Yeah, Elliot.
I don't.
Why do we need to sign a waiver?
For the drug addiction class and a couple others.
So
Because
what's
it
the-
talks
what's the-
about drugs.
It's so your parents know that you're in a class talking about drugs. And it's all good, but it's an archdiocese rule. What?
Oh, never.
Is he
mind.
gonna talk about
All right,
that?
any questions? All right, now listen, here's what I need you guys to do. Don't pick up your chairs and put them around these two tables here. Please,
Give me
thank
up.
you.
Give me under.
Yeah.